Hey, this is Elise Hugh from TED Talks Daily, and I'd love to tell you about Whole Foods Market. You know what I love about January? It's that fresh start energy we all feel. And this year, I'm actually going to try and keep my goals realistic, which means I need places that make healthy choices easy and affordable. That's why I've been spending more time at my local Whole Foods Market. The thing is, Whole Foods Market makes it possible to stick with those New Year intentions without meal prepping for hours or breaking the bank. Shop all things wellness at Whole Foods Market.
A rich life isn't a straight line to a destination on the horizon. Sometimes it takes an unexpected turn with detours, new possibilities, and even another passenger or three. And with 100 years of navigating ups and downs, you can count on Edward Jones to help guide you through it all. Because life is a winding path made rich by the people you walk it with. Let's find your rich together. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Welcome, dear friends, to Mindful Mondays. I'm your host, Ashley Bentley, and this is a gentle, grounded space to slow down, turn inward, and meet your lived, embodied world with a little more understanding and care. Right here on the Neurodivergent Experience podcast. So whether you're neurodivergent, highly sensitive, or simply curious about consciousness, change, and what it really means to live with presence, you are very welcome here. And all this month on the podcast, we are exploring the anatomy of a breakthrough, how real sustainable change actually happens. And last week, we explored state, the nervous system, regulation, and the difference between reacting and responding. And today we move into the second pillar of meaningful change, story. The narratives we live inside, the interpretations our minds quietly run, the meaning we assign, often without realizing we're doing it. And we'll finish off today with a real treat for you. Today's guided practice is a story, quite apt for what we're doing here this week, and perhaps a bit on the nose, you might be thinking. But it's a story about stories, and one I think you're going to find very special. So have you ever noticed that we humans absolutely love stories? We love to hear them, we love to tell them, we love to read them, and we love to watch them. And the reason we love stories so much is that we are living stories. Whether we're aware of it or not, we all live inside stories. Stories about who we are and what's possible for us. Stories about what always happens and what never does. And stories about our capacity, our worth, our limits, and our safety. And here's something important to understand. Most changes don't fail because of a lack of effort. They fail because the story underneath the effort remains untouched. We can change behaviors and set goals and create strategies, but if the underlying narrative stays the same, the system will quietly pull us back to what's familiar. And this isn't because we're broken or because we're sabotaging ourselves. It's because the nervous system and the brain are doing exactly what they're designed to do. Stories are how humans make sense of the world. Long before facts and data or logic, we learned through myth and metaphor and meaning. Fairy tales and parables, family narratives, cultural scripts. These weren't just entertainment. They were how we learned what was safe, what was dangerous, who belonged, and who didn't. And even now, as adults, the brain doesn't respond primarily to facts. It responds to meaning. That's why you can know something logically and still feel stuck. Because facts inform the mind, but stories shape identity. So if change feels hard, it's often not because you lack discipline. It's because the story hasn't moved yet. And there's actually fascinating research now showing why this happens. Studies in psychology suggest that intelligence doesn't necessarily make us more accurate. It often makes us more convincing to ourselves. Our brains use reasoning to protect the story we already believe. We gather evidence and reinterpret events and selectively remember experiences that confirm who we think we are and how we think the world works, which explains something many of us know intimately. You can be wise and still be stuck. And this isn't because you're broken. It's because your nervous system and identity are organized around a story that once kept you safe. So let's look at how our stories are formed. They're not formed randomly. They are formed through safety, repetition, and meaning. The brain is a prediction machine. Its primary job is not happiness, it is survival. So it asks questions like, what usually happens next? Or what do I need to expect? Or what should I prepare for? And when certain experiences repeat, especially the emotionally charged ones, the brain begins to form a narrative shortcut. This is how it goes. This is what people are like. This is what happens when I try. This is what I can expect. And over time, these stories become the invisible lenses through which we experience the world. So we don't experience reality directly. We experience it through the story. And here's a key reframe that I want to land gently. When you find yourself repeating the same situations and the same dynamics and the same emotional outcomes, this is not self-punishment. This is pattern completion. Your brain is always looking for proof of what it already believes. So if the story is, things always go wrong for me, your attention will naturally lock on to setbacks. And if the story is, I have to work twice as hard to be accepted, your system will scan for moments of being left out. This is not pessimism. This is confirmation bias, a completely neutral neurological process. Your brain finds evidence to match the narrative it's already running. And this creates a quiet loop. A story shapes what you notice, and what you notice shapes how you respond, and how you respond shapes what happens next. And what happens next becomes evidence for the original story. And your beautiful unconscious mind will bend and shape the details of whatever has happened to ensure that it fits that narrative. That's why two people can live the same experience and walk away with entirely different meanings. So, where do we form our stories, you might be asking? Well, they don't come from just one place. Some are inherited from family or school, culture, religion, or early authority figures. And some are absorbed from media, comparison, and the unspoken rules of belonging. And some are woven quietly, internally, in moments where the nervous system needed protection. And stories born from shame often sound like self-criticism. Stories born from fear often sound like certainty. And most of them weren't chosen consciously. They were chosen unconsciously for safety. And for neurodivergent minds, this process can be amplified. Pattern recognition is stronger. Emotional encoding is deeper. And repetition lands harder. This means stories can become very convincing very quickly. And it's usually a negative story that lands the quickest and hardest. And before you know it, a few experiences can start to feel like a universal truth. And again, this is not a flaw. It's a nervous system doing what it does best, learning fast. The invitation isn't to shame the story, it's to see it. So many people ask, why do I keep ending up here again? And the answer is rarely because I made a bad choice. More often it's because this situation fits the story my system already knows how to navigate. Familiar doesn't mean healthy. Familiar means predictable, and predictability feels safer to a nervous system than the unknown, even when the unknown might be better. So change begins not by fighting reality, but by gently questioning the model we're living inside. So I want to share a personal story with you that I've mentioned several times before on this podcast. And I'm mentioning it again because it's one of the clearest examples of how story doesn't just affect us emotionally. It can sometimes arrive masquerading as a physical truth. So for as long as I can remember, my eyes were incredibly sensitive to sunlight. Even on cloudy days, brightness would make my eyes sting and burn and water unless I was wearing sunglasses. So if you ever saw me outside, summer or winter, I had my sunglasses on. And I had a pair everywhere. They lived in my handbag, in my glove box, and scattered throughout the house. And if I couldn't find them, I would feel genuinely stressed. The story was simple and unquestioned. I am not okay without my sunglasses. And then, as I began studying and learning about neuroscience and circadian rhythm and the benefits of natural light, I felt so frustrated and really disappointed that I couldn't take part. But eventually, my curiosity won. And I remember that day so clearly. I decided I'm going to go for a walk without my sunglasses. It was bright and sunny, and I walked outside, and I was absolutely fine. My brain and body adjusted beautifully. No pain, no stinging, no distress. I couldn't believe it. Suddenly I could see how much energy I'd been spending protecting a story that no longer needed to run. It was a bit like Dumbo's magic feather. The belief had been doing the work. And this is the biology of belief. And now, this example won't work for everyone that has a light sensitivity, but it does show how powerful it can be to question our stories safely, gently, and with curiosity. Because belief shapes perception, and perception shapes bodily response, and bodily response shapes reality. And when you multiply that by identity and relationships and work and safety, you start to see how powerful story really is. And we've just seen stories don't just live in the mind, they live in the body. A story of danger tightens the chest, or it burns the eyes. A story of inadequacy collapses posture. And a story of I must please activates fawning. The body responds before logic ever gets a say, which is why last week's episode on state matters so much. When the body is regulated, stories begin to loosen, and when the body feels safe, new interpretations become possible. And it's really important that I mention that this is not about forcing positive thinking. It's about creating flexibility to your stories. It's so important that the new stories we start to form feel true. Otherwise, they aren't going to work. So here are a few gentle ways to begin shifting your story, not by replacing it or arguing with it, but widening it. So instead of, I can't do this, you can try, I'm learning how to do this. Language shapes identity. I'm learning to keeps the nervous system safe. It doesn't demand certainty, and it doesn't deny reality. It allows growth without pressure and movement without threat. It signals process, not failure. And another powerful word is yet. I can't do this yet. One word, but it opens the future. Without yet, the mind gives up. And with it, the mind stays curious. And if you want a few more options here, a few more doorways into gentle rewiring, you can also use language like this. I'm beginning to understand how to. I'm starting to see how. I'm noticing. I'm experimenting with. This kind of phrasing matters because it keeps the nervous system feeling safe. It doesn't demand that you leap into a new identity overnight, and it doesn't force certainty where your body still feels unsure. Stories have to feel true enough for the nervous system to accept them. So no toxic positivity here or fake it till you make it. Eliciting the curious student within by using the right language for where you want to be allows you to shift that story. So they need to feel true enough so that your system doesn't reject them as fantasy or danger. And that's why I'm learning to is so powerful. It keeps your identity flexible. It keeps your inner world open. And it allows your story to shift in a way that feels steady, believable, and embodied, instead of pressured or performative. And story shifting doesn't mean erasing your past. It means honoring the intelligence of the adaptations you made. If you became hypervigilant, you were protecting yourself. If you became agreeable, you were trying to preserve connection. And if you withdrew, you were conserving energy. So the old story shouldn't be labeled as wrong. It was useful, likely, at one point. The question is now, is this still the best story for who I'm becoming? And a powerful way to work with your story is to first identify what the story is. So that could be, I always struggle. And then you can work on framing the new story, which could be, I've struggled, and I'm also learning how to move with more ease. Notice the difference. Nothing is denied, nothing is forced, but the nervous system senses space and possibility where before it was stuck. And space is where choice lives. So how about a little bit of bite-sized Buddhism? There's a beautiful thread here that runs through both Eastern wisdom and Western psychology. The poet Rumi famously wrote about the guest house, the idea that every thought, emotion, and inner visitor arrives for a reason, not to be exiled and not to be argued with, but to be welcomed, listened to, and understood. And Dr. Carl Jung echoed this from a psychological lens when he spoke about the second half of life, the moment when the masks begin to crack and the stories we've lived inside no longer fit the truth of who we're becoming. In both cases, the message is the same. What we resist doesn't disappear. It returns, asking to be integrated. This is why story work matters so much. We don't change by overpowering old narratives. We change by listening to them long enough to understand what they were trying to protect, and then gently updating the story as we grow. Not through control or force, but through integration. And before we move into today's guided practice, I want to invite you into something a little different. What you're about to hear is a story about stories, a woven, imaginal journey that speaks directly to the part of you that understands through images, symbolism, and feeling, rather than logic. So there's nothing you need to analyze or remember. Just allow your imagination to follow whatever images arise, and trust that your beautiful unconscious mind will digest the deeper metaphor beneath the words. And this story is adapted from an upcoming bedtime alchemy track that I've written that I'll be soon releasing on Insight Timer, a space where I weave together metaphor, nervous system regulation, and deep rest. So if you're able to, make sure you're somewhere comfortable and supported, either seated or lying down. And if you are currently driving or operating heavy machinery, please ensure to pause the recording until you can safely come back into stillness. Otherwise, when you're ready, let your body settle. And let the day fall quiet. And simply let the story wash over you. And as you gently settle in now, you might enjoy allowing your eyes to close. There's nowhere you need to go, and nothing you need to solve. There's just this moment and the quiet invitation to listen. And perhaps you begin by taking a slow breath in through the nose and letting it out through the mouth as a soft sigh. Good, that's right. And as the breath leaves the body, notice how the shoulders naturally drop and how the weight of your body is held by the chair, the floor, the bed beneath you. And can you imagine now gentle roots beginning to grow from the soles of your feet, down, 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 down into the center of the earth, grounding you in this present moment. Good, that's right. And as your breath finds its own rhythm, easy, natural, unforced, you may notice the mind beginning to soften too. Thoughts drifting, sensations moving. And from this place, a story begins to gently unfold. Once upon a time, not so very far from here, there was a village nestled between dreaming woods and the edge of the sky. And in this village, everyone wore a cloak, and each cloak was different. Some were light and shimmering, and others were heavy, thick, and worn. Some sparkled with confidence, and others faded quietly into the background. But all of them, every single one, were stitched from stories. Stories spoken by parents, teachers, lovers, friends, society itself. You're too much. You're not enough. You're strong, don't feel. You're sensitive, be careful. You're gifted, but difficult. And thread by thread, these stories were sewn into fabric and wrapped gently, unconsciously, around growing shoulders. And over time, the villagers forgot they were wearing them. They simply called the cloaks me. But here's something the villagers didn't always realize. Not every thread came from someone else. Some threads were woven in moments of shame, when a feeling felt too big. And some were stitched in fear, when safety mattered more than truth. And some were added quietly, patiently, by an inner voice trying to protect, trying to make sense, trying to keep belonging intact. Stories we told ourselves again and again until they felt like fact. And yet, beyond the village square, past the fields of warm wheat and the rivers silvered by dusk, stood a small round house at the forest's edge. And inside that house lived the weaver. No one knew how long the weaver had been there. Some said they had always existed, and others said they appeared whenever someone was ready. And they sat at a loom beneath a low, arched ceiling, hands moving slowly, deliberately, weaving threads of memory, breath, light, and choice. The weaver did not rush. They never pulled a thread too quickly. They knew something important. Stories cannot be forced to change. They must be met. And one evening, someone arrived at the weaver's door. Perhaps they were young. Perhaps they were older. Perhaps they were simply tired. I don't know which parts of my cloak are mine anymore, they said. Some parts keep me warm, and some make it hard to breathe. And the weaver listened. And then they rose and brought forth a cloak unlike any other. It held no fixed pattern, no heavy stitching, and it shimmered faintly as if waiting. This one, the weaver said softly, is woven as you walk. And the visitor wrapped it around their shoulders and felt something unfamiliar. Space. Room to move. Room to grow. Room to choose. And as they stepped back into the world, old voices still called out. Old stories still reached for them, but now there was a pause, a moment of awareness, and in that pause, a choice. Some threads were allowed in, gentle ones, true ones, threads of curiosity, of self-respect, of compassion. And others were noticed and left unstitched. And something remarkable happened. The world responded differently. And not because the world had changed, but because the wearer had. their posture shifted, their breath softened, and their nervous system no longer braced against every moment. They began to see possibilities where there had once been only proof. And others noticed too. A baker who had long worn the cloak of "too late for me." A healer stitched into "I must never rest." A worker carrying "I'm scattered, not serious." And one by one, they felt the tug towards the forest edge, and the weaver welcomed them all. Some came ready to release old threads, some only curious, and some were afraid. But the weaver hurried no one, because the loom still turns, and it always will. And now, as you rest here, you might gently bring your attention back to your own body, the rise and fall of your breath, the quiet contact points beneath you, the sense of being held in this moment. You may not see your cloak, but perhaps you can feel it. The stories you carry, the ones given to you, and the ones you repeated to survive. And perhaps, without needing to change anything yet, you simply notice. You notice a thread that no longer fits, or a story that feels heavy, or a pattern that is ready to loosen. The weaver does not ask you to tear it away, only to notice and to remember. You can always unpick what no longer belongs. You can always choose a new thread. And as you rest now, know this: the loom is patient. Your nervous system learns through safety, and your story shifts when it is met with kindness. You are not broken. You are woven, and you are still becoming. And when you're ready, you can allow your breath to deepen slightly and feel the body again, and carry this quiet knowing with you into the rest of your day. The weaver remains, and so does your choice. And whenever you're ready, and not a moment before, you can feel free to gently open your eyes. Story is not something to conquer, it's something to befriend. And when you begin to understand the stories your mind has been telling, compassion naturally follows for why things unfolded the way they did, and for what is now quietly asking to change. And if this episode resonated with you, you might enjoy exploring my work on Insight Timer. Just search for Ashley Bentley, where you'll find guided practices, courses, bedtime stories, and deeper nervous system informed meditations to support this work. And next week on Mindful Mondays, we'll move into the final pillar of a breakthrough: strategy. Not strategy as hustle or forcing, but as what naturally reveals itself once your body feels safe and your story allows possibility. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and for listening with curiosity, and for your willingness to meet yourself with honesty and care. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't, and trust that your system knows the pace that it needs. And remember, we're all just walking each other home.
A rich life isn't a straight line to a destination on the horizon. Sometimes it takes an unexpected turn, with detours, new possibilities, and even another passenger, or three. And with 100 years of navigating ups and downs, you can count on Edward Jones to help guide you through it all. Because life is a winding path, made rich by the people you walk it with. Let's find your rich together. Edward Jones, member SIPC.